Hey guys, welcome back. This is Wendy with Through the Wrestle. Today I have a beautiful young woman joining me today. Her name is Gabby. She is a mother, an Army vet, a spoken word poet, and now she's an author. I am so excited to have her here today. I must warn you that parts of her story may be a little difficult to hear, so please use discretion if you're listening around small children. Before we get started, I'd like for you to take a listen to a small piece of her poem, They Told Me I Couldn't Kiss the Sun.
Have you ever grieved a love so deep and realized you were hugging nothing at all, yet you were a part of it all? Something real. I watched my own desires drowning at the hand of my selfishness, wedged in between where I stood at the cliff of God's plan and my careless actions during my I pressed on phase. Bet you didn't catch that. Because it doesn't show up the same.
Freedom from depression.
For everyone. So show up for them when they aren't acting the same. Maybe that's selfish, but you want the same. Gratitude and love.
Okay. Gabby, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is. I'm so glad that we finally got to do this. We've been trying to do this for a while now, right?
Too long. Way too long.
Yeah, so I was thinking that I have known you for a really long time. Yeah. How old were you when I met you?
You said 2002, so 14.
You were 14 years old.
I was in the ninth grade.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You are getting old.
It's true. I'm 33 now, so there you go. There's the perspective.
If you're getting old, then so am I,
well,
which is the scary part.
It is.
So, yeah, so you are such a beautiful soul. You've always been so joyful. You got such a beautiful smile.
Thank you.
Just this incredible laughter.
Aww.
But, you apparently were going through some really, really hard times.
I was.
Yeah.
I definitely was.
Yeah.
Some stuff that I just didn't want people to know, is I didn't want to burden them, and so sometimes you keep those things to yourself. You just do. You don't want the world to know that your life is crumbling because you don't want them to cry for you. You're already going through enough, and then you see what they're going through too,
Right.
And so that was a lot of why I didn't tell you or mom or dad or anyone for that matter. So
yeah, I was very surprised to know that you had gone through a lot of the things, and it wasn't until I read your book that I found out a lot of things about you that when I talked to you, I said, why didn't I know? Why did your parents know? I mean, I was really wondering.
They didn't know half the stuff. They really didn't. They knew some of the things, but even then, I didn't want to burden them with them. I'm just that type of person. I'm very caring to others, and so for me, that felt like a burden, which it shouldn't. It absolutely shouldn't. But that was just the way that I could handle it, and the way that I decided to at the time. I wish that I wouldn't have. Because I would have just had the support I needed, but
right.
That's the way that I chose to go. So the book was a huge part in my healing. It was a huge part in me telling people what I went through, so I didn't have to continue to hide in silence. And for me, this was my freedom. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So where does your story begin?
Oh gosh, where does it begin? Truthfully, when I started to peel back the layers, it started when I was about 10 years old. I think I kind of shared with you off camera about my experience as an elementary student with my first boyfriend. And that particular moment for me was the first time I ever compromised my own boundaries. It was the first time that I guess I didn't know my self-worth. And so, you have that boyfriend that breaks up with you. You're in the 5th grade. What do you know, right? And he's like, hey, I don't like you anymore. We were together for all of 4 days, But in my mind, I'm dating this guy and I just like him. And he was like, no, I want to date such and such now. And I'm like, well, what? And so for me, it was a little jolting, and I'm like, well, then date us both. Like,
oh wow,
what little girl does that?
Yeah.
You should have enough self-respect to say no, fine. But I didn't, and of course, time goes on. But that was when I realized, whoa, you were already stopping yourself from having that self-worth at a young age. Where did that come from? And so I had to peel back those layers. I really did. And I started looking at the sequence of my life, and I went, whoa, there's some things here that I didn't know I needed to pray about, some things here that I didn't know I needed guidance on, And so, again, I was keeping a lot of things to myself, just like I did with all the things I went through. And so through the reflection, that's really, I guess, where you could say it. There weren't a lot of problems, growing up personally, but there were apparently, and so it wasn't until my adult life that I saw that. But nonetheless, things really went sour, I guess I'll say. let's see, I'll say it 20, no, I'll say a little bit further than that. Maybe 19. I'll say maybe 19. That was when I really started compromising myself. That was one of the poems in my book, is the one that says, "It's not jam, but preserves oneself." And there is a moment where you're in a place where you shouldn't be there. You're drinking and you're having a good time in college and you're doing all these things and you want people to like you, you know, you want the boyfriend, you want the cool guy, you want all these things, and you're in a situation, environment you shouldn't be. So I compromised my own boundaries by allowing this person, while I'm super drunk, to convince me to have sex with him after I said no, you know, after I had said no. And of course, I compromised that, one, for my safety in the moment.
Right.
I was in the moment, and when you're there, you're like, no, but then you're by yourself, so you're like, what do I do? You know, there were other people where they were, but I was alone with this person. And so at that point, they took advantage of me.
Yeah.
After I had even already said no. And so I then didn't realize that it was assault or anything like that until a little while later. And I was like, oh my gosh.
You felt violated?
I really did. So that was really when things started to take a turn. When I actually told a friend of mine what happened, she didn't believe me.
Oh, wow.
And that's hard. It was very hurtful. Very hurtful, Wendy. That was one of the first times I started to not share things. I realized that, what's the point? You know, if nobody's going to hear you cry, why say anything at all? And so that, I really believe that was one of the first moments I stopped talking about certain things.
So let me ask you this. So how long have you been a Christian?
Oh gosh, 11, I'll say 11 years old. I was really a little kid when I gave my life over, but I'll say 11 was really, I went to summer camp and gave my life to Christ. Yeah.
And I ask you that because I think that the misconception is that as a Christian, you're always going to do the right thing, or that, you know, and
absolutely.
And right, because that's the image, I guess, that people, they think of Christians like, oh, you know, you're a Christian, you're going to.
And I have parents who are
ministers. How could you choose wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so we can get a little judgy when we hear that someone's a believer. But as you said, and even for myself, like sometimes we found ourselves in situations where we know better.
Yeah.
You know, we know we shouldn't.
I absolutely knew I shouldn't have been there. Yeah. 50 million times before, I knew I shouldn't have been in that predicament, but there I was, you know. And what do you do? How do you get out of that? I didn't know how at the time, you know. And so he takes you through. You cry out. You say, "Hey, friend, this is what happened to me." And they say no, and then you're like, "Wait a minute, you know, where am I going here? What am I doing here?" You know. And then you start to put the pieces together, you know. But even then, I really didn't know. I really still didn't know. Just, I guess, how deeply my self-worth wasn't there. Like it really didn't exist. Well, maybe it even contributed to diminishing your self-worth. Absolutely. Because you're confiding in a friend that's supposed to help you. Absolutely. And then they say, no, you know, that didn't happen that way, or you're just trying to make it into something else. Absolutely. And that's exactly what had happened.
Yep.
And then from those moments, I started to kind of rebel. I really did. I started rebelling. I was always a really good kid. I never really got into trouble.
Yeah.
I did what I was supposed to do, go to school and do the activities, do the whole thing. But there were these secret moments that I had. And then especially in college, you know, you're discovering yourself and doing that whole bit. And I'll say the rebellion really started even after that, because you go through college, you know, but then you come out and you're an adult, right? You're still not an adult. I'm still not an adult, but you're an adult. And so through all of that, I remember rebelling with the marriage thing. Really, I got married after 4 months. Like, who does that?
I remember that.
4 months. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's like, what? And I'm like, no, you crazy gook, you're fine. Like, you're doing great. What are you doing here? It was a rebellious thing. It really was this, like, I've got it together. I know what I'm doing. You know, I'm in love with this guy, you know, that whole deal. And the truth was, I had no clue, but I had this desire. Remember that part? I have this desire to want the kid, the marriage, the boyfriend, the life, whatever it is that I had concocted as this expectation for my life. Because I'm that person. I'm the person that's like, by 29, I want to do this. By 5, I'm that person. And so for me, it was check the block. I'm getting a little older here. I was 23. My God, I wasn't getting older. You know, not at all. I had no idea. And the crazy thing was the Holy Spirit told me on the way up. I had my feet crossed. I'll never forget it. And I am on my way up. And
on your way up?
On my way up to get married.
Okay.
And that particular day, I'm just looking out the window, and I'll plain as day, never forget it. The Holy Spirit was like, "Don't do it. Don't do it." I remember the voice from this direction, and I was like, "Oh."
Into your left ear.
Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay. And I'm still it mortifies me because I shouldn't have. I even had a moment where the magistrate asked, like, "Does your family know this? Does your family know what you're doing?" And I lied. And I said, yeah. They didn't have a stinking clue. And again, compromising my self-worth, compromising the love my family has for me, all of those things for my own desires. Desires outside of God's will. That was not God's will for my life. It was because I think of the lessons, but truthfully, he had another path. There's the permissive will, and then there's the perfect will.
Right.
I was in the permissive will. He allowed me because he knew that I needed the lesson. And God, did I need the lesson. I needed the lesson. I'm actually so grateful for the brokenness, which is so crazy, but it's true.
I hear you.
And you know, in those moments of just being confused and unsure, I always heard the voice of God, and I'm so grateful for that. Those are the things that kept me alive. Those are the things that kept me, you know, healed. in moments of my brokenness, he would like put me back together, and then I'd pick myself up and keep moving. And you know, after the marriage and everything, well, not after, but during, so much domestic violence, and it's because of the struggle that person was having in their own life, and I now know that. Wow. But I also had my own demons that I was fighting, and there was always this the unequal yoke thing. You're just pulling back and forth because you're fighting your own stuff, they're fighting yours, and you're trying to fit this thing together. This should have never been together because you desired something outside of God's will, but God's like, I'm gonna allow it because that's where you said you wanted to be, so go ahead and learn your lesson. And man, was it a struggle. Man, was it awful. You know,
How long were you married?
5 years. Yeah, almost 5 years to 5 years and a few months.
Was the domestic violence something that happened right away, or was it just something that evolved?
It's something that, honestly, I had so many red flags. All the red flags that you could possibly have. But you're partying, you're drinking. We were doing all the fun things because that's what I wanted. And so that alcohol and all those things were involved, deeply involved. And so it kind of showed its ugly head. I don't want to say as time went on because it showed its ugly head early, but I realized it in a big way, maybe a few months, you know, into our relationship. And the domestic violence honestly started maybe about 3 months in. Okay. Because I found out some things, and then you confront the person.
Yeah, and they get angry.
They get angry, and then you're like, I'm telling the truth, you know it. And then it turns into this awful scene, you know, just this awful scene. And so, again, boundaries were just, the lines
blurred.
Yeah, they were blurred. And in it, it's funny because as blind as I was, I still had the love for myself. So that's why I always stood up for myself in those moments. So lines were always being drawn, but then I would erase them to make the person comfortable.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I would allow that person I would move it. I'd move the line. That's kind of what it was. I would draw it and move and draw and move and draw and move. And still that self-worth and also the desire. It was both. It was like the worth and the desire kind of go hand in hand. And when you want something so bad, there were moments when I wanted to be married so bad and wanted this thing so bad that I just compromised myself over and over and over and over again. And then, boom, you know, I started internalizing things. I remember one time I actually yelled out, "You're stealing my shine," because I felt myself darken. You know, I'm a spirited girl.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sassy and fun and spirited and laugh, you know, all the time. Boom, the darkness had came. And it was after a really awful night of fighting and everything. I had been thrown down the steps.
Oh, geez.
And I really can't even remember everything that had transpired. Alcohol was involved. And I remember saying, "You're dampening my shine. Like, you're my light. My light's being darkened." And I remember that was the first time that I had depression really just like cloaked
You felt
me.
it.
Yeah, and I retreated from my family. You know, my mom and I are so tight,
Yeah.
right? My best friend. And I stopped kind of talking to her. I'd pick up the phone, but I wouldn't go over there because I felt the shame. I felt like there was
She was
this
going to see it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It hurt because she feels, and
Everything.
she would be able to look at you and know that something was wrong.
Absolutely.
And you just didn't want the questions.
I couldn't look at my mother in the face. I couldn't look at my dad, Papa, in the face.
Yeah.
Come on, you know?
You would start crying the moment he said, "What's wrong?"
He tears up at anything, you know? I couldn't do it. If they really knew, I just told my parents more of what happened weeks ago. You know, I really peel back these layers because it's tough. And so at those moments, that's when the depression really cloaked me. It's when it started. I remember, funny enough, writing poetry to get myself through. One of the first poems, I have it in my, it's not in the book, but I wrote it in my phone, and I was just like, God, why am I here? I don't understand. I had been married for a few months. You're supposed to be excited. You're supposed to be happy. And I wasn't.
Were you starting to have thoughts of suicide at that point?
At that point, it was...
Or were you just kind of wondering what your purpose was and where your place was?
What was my purpose? Where was my place? God, why am I here? Why did I make this choice?
Yeah.
It didn't become a suicidal thing until maybe, I'll say, maybe 2 years in. Maybe 2 years in. Wow. That's when things changed. When I moved to Texas, when I joined the service. Yeah, that was when it really changed for me because I was alone. I was alone.
You were away from family.
I was away from family. Not only had I already pushed them away, I'm out and doing this big girl thing, you know, and I'm by myself. And then I have this new little boy, you know, my sweet Landon, and I'm out there all by myself. And so you start internalizing everything because you don't have a soundboard. You don't have anyone there to take the burden for you. So you start internalizing the things you're being told or the things that you see, and you're going, it's my fault. You know, yeah, I'm not good at cleaning up the house. I'm not good at whatever they're telling you, you know. And man, it was rough to say the least. I remember one of the first times that I had that moment where I decided I didn't want to be here anymore. I was in this beautiful home in El Paso, and I should have been so happy, right? And I don't remember what had made me go this far, but I remember that I kind of just like snapped, and I was like, I can't take this anymore. If this person doesn't love me, then where's my self-worth, you know? And that's really where I was at. I took sheets and decided to, you know, hang them somewhere, right? But I remember standing in the stairs. I was in the stairs of funny enough, kind of a place that looked like this. And I was standing there, and there was kind of like this beam thing there, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it and how to get out of this life. I really just wanted life to pause, you know, so I could figure out what else to do, how to get myself out. I don't think that I ever truly wanted to leave the earth. I really wanted to stop.
So it's funny you say that, because I just had a conversation with another young woman, and she said that she didn't want to end her life, but she wanted everything to just be on pause, because maybe she could just be in the hospital for a little while, and she wouldn't have to think about all of this. So you had those same. As a matter of fact, there was a time, and I'll tell you that I did go to the hospital to get away, and that's another thing that happened for me, because a lot of times it was about getting away. Yeah. How can I circumvent everything and go on another path? Because I know at this point, I already know I shouldn't have been there. You know you shouldn't be in this scenario. But what do? You've got this kid, you've got this marriage, you've got this job, you're in another place. Yeah, you're supposed to be trying,
right?
I'm
supposed to be trying. The good wife thing.
Yeah.
The good wife thing, you know, the good girlfriend thing, the good whatever friend thing. And that's what you do. I'm a good person, so I have to do. The Bible says to stay married, you know, But not under certain circumstances. God doesn't want to see you in pain. He doesn't want to see you hurt. He doesn't want to see that.
Abused.
He doesn't. That's why he whispered, "Don't do it." That's why he said it. And I remember that spiral for me. It really began there. I would hide it. I would go to work, you know, and everybody's like, "Oh, how are you?" I'm like, "Great." There was a girlfriend of mine, funny enough, that I had actually brought into my home. She was going through an awful experience. She's standing there showing me her bruises. I'm going through the same thing, Wendy. And here I am trying to coach somebody else.
She didn't know either.
She had no idea. I
But
told
you
her.
understood her.
Yeah, I did. So deeply. You know, I was able to mentor her. You know, girl, leave that guy. You don't need to be with him. Here I am giving people this advice, and I'm
That you can't take.
I can't take it all. I was so blind to it, and it wasn't until I looked at myself in the mirror and really had the moment, you know, with myself. I went to therapy. I remember there was a time after that moment where I, you know, decided that I didn't want to be here, and I hung the sheets and everything, that whole crazy bit. I had written a note to my children, and to my son and to my parents and everything. And then after I saw the note, after I was done, I saw the note. That's when it hit me, like, whoa, like, what are you doing? You know, why are you, no, absolutely not.
Wow.
And so I ripped it up. I'm like, oh my God, and I take everything down. And then I said, I need help. You know, I need some help here. So I remember going, and I believe it was the next day, I said, I need to see a therapist. Like, I went straight in there. I was like, I need to see a therapist. I need to see somebody. And again, I'm in there, and I'm still fibbing on the survey. They're like, what's happened? You know, so I'm fibbing the whole time. Oh, I didn't really do this, but I kind of did this. No, the truth is, girl, you tried to take your life.
It was there help for you as a veteran?
There was. You have to dig, you know, but there is help, and you have to take it though. You have to take it.
Did you fear that they would dismiss you from the military?
Absolutely, and that was a part of the hush hush too.
Yeah.
You know, and it shouldn't be that way.
Right.
There should be this safe haven, but there's so many things that they tell you, you know, don't do this, or we're going to put you here, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
In fact, I ended up in a class with people who were doing things far beyond even what I could imagine. Running into traffic, really things. And that is one of the other things that really checked myself. Okay, no, you don't want to leave this life. You want to stop. So that's when I learned about what's called suicidal ideation. I had no idea there was a difference between wanting to do it, doing it, and then, you know, so there's all these different things of just the thoughts. You just maybe have the thoughts because you want to press pause. And one of the questions I answered was, do you want to go to sleep and never wake up? That was the one that I said yes to. Because it wasn't that I wanted to die, I wanted to pause. I wanted to sleep and reconfigure some things. And when that happened, I remember the lady said to me, she says, what did she say? Be more present. Learn how to be more mindful. And that's when I started to go this way and really see what is going on here. What is going on? And I remember somebody also saying to me, it is not until you say that you don't want to do something altogether, not I think, not maybe, but it's until you say no. That is when the decisions will begin to change for you. I always said, I think I want to leave. Maybe I'll leave. Maybe I won't stay. You know, one day I never said yes until, it wasn't until I had moved back. And when I moved back, because I tried again. I tried the relationship again. Then there's a whole story there. It wasn't until I moved back to Virginia that I tried again. We tried our relationship again because I filed for divorce when I was in Texas. It was actually the last day that I was there. My mother was there to pick us up, and I traveled across the United States alone, Wendy.
I remember.
Crazy wild. And I was going to do it, packed my whole house up and everything. 2 babies in tow, right? And it wasn't until I got back and my mom had said to me, what can you live with? And I was like, whoa, I can't live with this anymore. I cannot live a whole life like this. Maybe another year, but certainly not 50. Yeah. Certainly not 30. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I got up and I was like, you're not going to take this anymore. You're not going to do this anymore. You're not. And that was that. I called my mom on the phone. I said, we're really done now. We're really finished. She's like, huh? I thought everything was going so great. No, it wasn't. I was trying to put Band-Aids on things, you know?
Yeah. Had you hit rock bottom at that point?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The last time I had a suicidal thought was in the home, and I lived in Hampton when I moved back. And weeks before that, I had found out that my friend had passed away from suicide. And that was one of the moments I said, no, that is certainly not the way I want to go out.
Yeah, because you had a relationship with her where she seemed like everything was fine.
So sweet. hey, sweetheart, can I braid your hair? What do you need? Do you need anything? And we wouldn't see each other all the time, but whenever we greeted each other, it was always so warm and so friendly. And her name was Nakovi. And she was just the sweetest girl. I could just see her face. And I remember the last time I saw her before I left Texas, I had said to her, like, how are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm fine. Everything's great. I just got married and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm just like, really? Oh my goodness, it's so wonderful to see you. You know, I'm getting out of the service. She's like, me too. And that was that. And 2 weeks later, I left. I was on my way back from Texas, all of that. And I found out that she, you know, had taken her life. And I could not believe it. And I kept thinking to myself, what could I have done? What could I have done? There wasn't anything that anyone could have done.
Wow. Wow, that's...
Yeah, I know.
That's so hard. You had told me before about an incident. You woke up just in time for work.
Oh my goodness. So you're talking about the time that I'll say committed suicide, and I woke up.
Oh gosh.
And I woke
And
up
you woke
the next day. So it was that night before. Still another big argument, the domestic violence, all the craziness, right?
Yeah.
And at that time, I had been going through some physical things, so like chronic illness, fibromyalgia, all this stuff that I had just learned that I had. So I had all these different medications. I had a nerve blocker gabapentin. And I don't know anything about medications, but I was like, this should do. And I took 30 of them.
Wow.
You know? And I swallowed them. And I really couldn't believe that I had done it, but I was like, that's fine. This is it. And I laid down with the intent to just fall asleep, you know? And I remember being so drowsy. I mean, the nerve block. I was so drowsy, and I just fall asleep. Here my son is, like, in the other room, you know? But it didn't matter. Life didn't matter at that moment. I really had hit rock bottom. And I fell asleep, and I'm thinking I'll wake up in heaven, you know, or wherever the Lord puts me. And I wake up, and I'm still woozy, still foggy-headed. At 5 a.m, my alarm goes off, and here I am putting on my uniform because I knew they were going to call me to say, where are you?
You're late.
Of course I'm late. You have no idea what just happened. You have no clue. That particular night was really awful. I actually do remember what happened. That's crazy how things come back to you. I had came in late that particular night from grocery shopping, and this particular night he was very angry that I came in late for grocery shopping, and he took all the groceries. We didn't have much money. I'm an E3 in the military. Anything I have, we need.
Yeah.
He takes all the groceries and he throws them all over the floor. Lathan's in the little rocker thing. Landon's upstairs. And eggs. I remember him like throwing eggs at me. Right? I didn't know he had been drinking. I had no idea. But even then, you know, it doesn't matter. There's no excuses. Eggs everywhere. I remember scrubbing the eggs off the floor, and that was really like just such a low point for me. So I remember going upstairs, and that was when I was like, I'm done with this. And that for me felt like the only way out. I don't know why, but that's the only way I felt that I could escape it, you know? And so anyhow, I took those gabapentin, and then I woke up that morning. Here I am standing at PT in formation, hands behind my back, saluting the flag. And the whole time I'm still head swirling because I had 30 gabapentin in my belly. And I remember going and jogging, like going with the people around the track. Again, another moment that I checked before I ended up going to see therapy. Therapy was really the last thing I did, and it should have been the first thing I did. But it was the last thing I did. And it was because of the fear of people finding out or getting kicked out of the service. I've got babies to feed. But ironically, I want to leave my life. You know, it's that dissonance. It just doesn't
make sense.
Oh yeah, narcissistic abuse, man, it'll just shred you. Because you have these thoughts of, you know, that person self-imposes who they are on you. And so you start to see yourself another way, a whole other lens. And I didn't even know what narcissistic abuse was until I had gotten out and I started reading things, and I started really realizing, like, oh my gosh, you know, I was being gaslit the whole time. oh, we're going to fix things. We're going to do these things a certain way. And that's not true. And so red flags, if that person is not showing their behavior to be true, you jet, you leave.
Match what
If it does not match what they're saying, you jet, you leave. If they're doing things that aren't in line with their character and they're showing you, oh, I'm so happy, or they hit you and then they're happy in an hour.
Like it didn't happen.
Oh my gosh, Wendy. That was a thing. That's a thing that I really pray that women realize. If that person hits you one time and they tell you they love you within a second, oh, they've got some real deep things going here. Wow. If you start compromising yourself, especially in those ways, the verbal the verbal abuse, the physical, oh, you leave. There's don't question a thing. It will happen again.
Because right? Like you know inside of yourself, this is not right. This is not right. And you just keep telling yourself, you do. Once they come and apologize or maybe they're just happy again, you're like, well, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it was my fault.
Oh my gosh, every time, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it is my fault.
Maybe I
need to fix this. Maybe I should have done something different. What could I have done? I mean, you start questioning things you should never question about yourself. And then you start to internalize this evil you've created that was never yours to carry to begin with. And you never told yourself those things. When you were a kid, you never said those things to yourself. When you never said that stuff. And so it's like, where did that come from, you know? And you start carrying the burdens of others. You start carrying the hurts of others, and you you spiral. You really do.
So was that the end of your thoughts after you moved here?
Once I moved here, yeah, it was. When I moved here, I remember the last time, and this was because I tried again, even after we were divorced, I tried one more time to be with this person that I just shouldn't have been with. It was because I have children. You know, you have children, you try to do what you think is best for them, especially because I come from a two-parent home. I thought that was what was best. And it wasn't. The truth was they needed to see a happy mom. They needed to see a mom that wasn't being hurt, a mom that wasn't crying every day or what have you. And I remember sitting on the floor in my apartment, beautiful apartment. Again, I should have been so happy, right? And I'm sitting on the floor of my apartment, and this day, for some reason, I don't even know if the kids were there. I'll be honest, I still don't remember. But I remember cutting all the lights off, and I just wept, and I wept, and I wept, and I could hear the enemy say to me, it is okay, go ahead and take your life. And whispering these thoughts, and it sounded like multiple enemies just telling me that it was fine. God's not going to be mad at you. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. And I cried out to God because this is all I had with my voice. I didn't even have my mind. I only had my voice, and I said, no, I know that's not right. I know that's not right. And I refuse, and I refuse. And I remember just saying, God, please, please. And I still heard those thoughts, and I was trying to figure out. I got up, and I'm trying to find a way, again, to take my life. And then I was like, no more. I refuse to just end my life. I have no idea what God has planned for me. I have no clue. That's really when things started to turn around.
Wow.
But then there came the DUI. See, there's the DUI that really punched me in the gut. After I had said to myself and everyone around me, I'm not going to drink anymore, right? I'm not drinking anymore. I'm not going to do that. I then got a DUI. I'm out partying. This is actually around the time that I had chosen, I'm not going to be with that particular person anymore, but I was still on the fence.
Yeah.
Probably that same week. And I decided to go out. Let me go out and party. Let me go have a good time by myself because I'm who I am. I can do what I want, right? I'm in the car. I hear the Holy Spirit again. Go home. Go home. I'm sitting in front of Bar Louie, the Peninsula Town Center. I'm like, I'm not going home. Do what I want. Go home. Go home. I didn't. I got out. I'm drinking. And at that point, I had 2 drinks. I meet these guys, and I'm just like, I'm free, I'm going to do what I want to do. And then those 2 people that I had met, and a friend of mine had came, and we all go to this other place. We go there, and then I drink myself, like, really, it's heavy, right? And I of course, told myself, I'm not that drunk, I can get in the car, like, let me just go on home. I was so drunk. They had invited me back to their hotel because my girlfriend had came out of town. That's what it was. That's why she was there. she had came out of town, and I'm there, and no, I hadn't made it. I'm sorry. I was on my way. And that's when I had gotten pulled over by the cops. I couldn't find the location. I could not find this hotel. I'm on a street I've been on a million times.
Yeah.
I was drunk. I couldn't find this location. GPS is like rerouting. And little did I know there were 2 Holiday Inns on this street, and I didn't know. So I'm thinking I'm in one location. I'm not. I'm in a whole other place. And then out of nowhere, still don't know where this cop came from. It was God. I don't care what you say. Bing. Whoop, whoop. You know, I'm like, oh my God. You know, so you try to sober up.
Yeah.
You're shaking it off, and then
Try to keep your eyes straight.
yeah, keep my eyes straight. You know, and then he comes up to the car and he's like, ma'am, have you been drinking? And I'm like, yes, I had 2 drinks. Right? I tell him the truth, you know. I've had 2 drinks, and he's like, okay. So he does the test. We do the test. We do the thing. And then I get out the car because he's like, get out the car, ma'am. You know, because I skip a number. Like, I skip a number that he makes me count, right? Because I thought I had it down. I get out, and then he does the eye thing. I pass that test, but then he makes me walk.
Oh, no.
And I'm all confident. I take my shoes off, right? I need to take my shoes off because I have heels on.
Right,
That's the problem.
You're going to get wobbly with heels.
Right, I should have kept the heels on. I took the heels off.
It would have straightened you out.
It would have straightened me out, or at least they would have understood they were heels, right? No. Let me get my flat feet on the surface, right? So I'm lifting my legs, and
It's not funny.
It's not funny, but it is now, but it wasn't then. It certainly was not then. And here I go. I'm wobbling. I mean, right? And I say to the officer, I'm only wobbling because I had 2 drinks.
Oh, wow.
Womp, 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 right? Yeah, and really, that was... And I was like, what are you doing? You have children. You have the most creative mind. You have all these dreams and aspirations and goals. You know me, it's something new every day.
Yeah.
I was flushing it down the toilet quick. I mean, quick. And I'm sitting there in the holding tank. I'm in the holding tank. They put cuffs on me. Here I go. I walk in, right? And guess what? It's a girl that I know. She's the sheriff that's taking my mug shots.
Aww.
I was her drum major in high school. It was the most humiliating thing. And I'm sitting around these weekend women, because they're women who go to jail on the weekend, and they're going, sweetie, you shouldn't be here. You should not be here.
The voice of God speaking to you through these women.
Through these women who had real issues, real problems, real things going on. I had real things going on. I'd love to distance myself from other people. No, I was in there with them, right?
I know.
So I was one of them.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the rock bottom. And I knew at that moment I needed to change. And I was just like, I don't know what else to do, but I'm not doing it. I'm not doing that anymore. Funny enough, a week later, I'm starting to write everything down because I had to wait for 2 months before my hearing. I'm just twiddling my thumbs. I don't know what to do. You know, I know that something big's coming. I don't know what they're going to tell me. You know, are they going to convict me of it or not? I don't know. I'm trying everything to get out of it. The lawyer, I get the whole gamut. And the Holy Spirit speaks to me clear as day. He says, write a book. And I'm like, what? Write a book. It's for your healing. It is for your freedom. And I'm just like.
And then the enemy starts to talk in your ear, right?
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Yeah,
what are you thinking?
That's ridiculous.
Who are you?
You don't even like to write.
Right?
You don't want to sit down. You can't do, everything. Who do you think you are? An author? Really. But then I start to write.
Yep.
And that's when they told me I couldn't kiss the sun came. I'm sitting on the toilet and boom. So I grabbed my phone and I'm just like.
Just writing. The words just kept falling into you.
Flowed. I almost haven't edited a thing in that. It came out that freely, that smoothly. Yeah. Because at that time I had lost my brother. You know, I had already lost my uncle. I hadn't lost my grandmother yet, but I had lost those people. And then I lose the ex-husband. I get a DUI. Boom, I'm starting to see my life kind of like in film. And I'm like, no, girl, what? You're the girl who's cheery and fun and everybody loves you and you're the drum major girl and you're the this and the da-da-da-da. What have you done? And nobody's known this. And when I started to write, when I started to reflect, when I started to see all of these things, physically put on paper, I realized, oh, snap. this is something that people need to hear.
Yeah.
And so that's where I really gained my healing. That's when I really saw it. That's why it goes the revealing. I had to start revealing those deeper things. I had to reveal why I made those choices, why I decided to go down that path at all, for that matter.
Yeah.
And that was really when God started to do the work. It's really when he started to do the work. And that's where this book came from.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. There's a part in your book here, because I bought a book too.
Yes, you did. She was one of the first
did.
ones.
I couldn't wait. It's called Baggage Claim.
Yes.
And you know about our baggage. But there's a part there's a part here in the book, and I want to read it. I hope I do it justice as I read it.
I'm sure you will.
So, with a capital S-O, I finally learned to love me and that luggage I crawled out of. The dirty laundry he helped me wash and hang up my own laundry as a reminder of where I had victoriously came from and where I'm going to one day. He assured me I didn't have to lug it around anymore, but simply to unpack your bags and stop running around with stinking piles of lies and unloving thoughts you rehearsed in your head. Instead, repeat the beautiful words monogrammed in the original lining placed there by the divine, and then in quotations, I am loved, if by no one else, at least I'm loved by God and me. What is that about? Because it sounds like a pivotal point where something is happening, a change in your attitude about yourself.
Yes.
And your self-acceptance.
It really is. Sometimes it's still, tied to that whole desire of wanting someone to love you. But funny enough, I don't know if you knew this, I dated a 45-year-old guy. Okay, so that for me is much older than, for me. But that particular person gave me this new perspective. It was the person I dated for 2 months, so it doesn't really count. They were just friends, more of a friend than anything. But they really gave me a perspective that I had never really thought of before. And they're like, you're dragging around all this stuff. You keep talking about all these things you've been through. And it was one of those moments where I was like, wait a minute. If you got all this dirty laundry in your closet and then you invite somebody in, like, it's still gonna stink. It's still gonna stink. You've gotta unpack that stuff, wash it, go ahead and hang it up, hang it up because it exists, but clean it off, and you don't have to necessarily hide it, but you gotta clean it up. You gotta, make sure that that God is in the midst of it, that all of the, just line things up properly. I don't know, this particular person was a good sounding board at that moment of my healing, because that was probably a few months after I had been back to Virginia. So it was the first person that I had actually kind of spieled my guts with, and they just gave me such a fresh perspective on my own life. And that was kind of one of those, okay, you've got to, number one, stop finding self-worth in other people. That's where you've got to stop doing. And then number two, girl, stop carrying all that stuff around. It's too heavy. It's too much. You're carrying burdens you don't need to. Go ahead and open up to people. Go ahead and start talking to folks. You're going to feel better for it at the end of the day, And so the washing of the laundry was really about me talking to people, was really about me finally coming around and telling folks that I've been through some mess. This has been a terrible journey, and finally, once I started to unpack that laundry and do a little bit more in that way and be honest and be transparent, the freedom that came with it all. Yeah. And that's really what the baggage claim was about.
Yeah, and when you're able to talk about those things, that's where you find freedom.
Absolutely.
And you find healing.
Yeah.
And then the more you talk about it, the more you remember some stuff, and then that comes up, and then you got to deal with that.
You do. But
that's how you do it.
Yeah, it's years of button pushing to find out, the elevator, which door does this open, and that's okay. It really is okay. It's just a matter of unpacking that bag. You gotta unpack that bag, and you gotta come out from the shame. That's kind of why I said to come out of the bag, because for me, I zipped myself in it. I did. I hid away, and I was too ashamed to tell you, to tell mom, to tell dad, to tell people, period, friends that had no clue. They thought I was living the life. She went to Texas, and she's just having such a good time, and look at her cute pictures. I had a cousin of mine, she's a sister to me, And we sat across from each other, and I just started pouring. And she was like, what?
I know.
You went through what?
Yeah.
She was like, you look so happy.
Yeah.
That social media, you don't even know. There are people going through things you can never, even fathom.
Yeah. So I asked you, you told me the other day, because we were talking about the cover. I don't know if you can see, it's the shape of lips. And you told me something about these trees on here.
Yes. So
why don't you tell us about
it's the Sycamine Tree. There's scripture in the Bible, and I honestly need to do better about describing it, but about God and the Sycamine Tree and how he sits by it and he prays. And the Sycamine Tree is actually a tree that's so deeply rooted that if you cut it and you try to kill it and you chop it up, that if there's even just a little bit of that root left, it will regrow all over again.
Yeah.
And that's what this book is. This is the cutting the roots out. That's why it says on there, it's like depression and love and death and joy and pain, because I really had to peel back the roots and chop them and cut them. I had to dig them out, every stinking root, because sometimes you'll heal one thing and then you're triggered by something else because you haven't dealt with that thing. It wasn't until I met my sweet boyfriend, and he's helped me reveal so many things. I've been triggered there because I didn't know there were things I still wasn't finished, healing from. And so that's what this is. This mouth here is just about the freedom of speaking your truth, not hiding behind your shames, not hiding behind your story. God has put all those people in the Bible have gone through things. All the people in the world have gone through something. Jesus went through things. God, everyone has went through something, and you have to be transparent. I really believe that's deeply a part of your healing. I just do.
Yeah, and it helps others find healing.
Absolutely.
Because they'll look at your story and they can relate. And that's why on my YouTube channel I always say, that it's to help people find hope for another day.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes you just need that one day. You just need to make it past today.
You do. Yeah.
And if you can hear an inspiring story, a testimony, and find that hope for today, then you can make it till tomorrow.
You really can. And sometimes that's all people have to hang on to.
Yeah.
Is that one word of encouragement, or just knowing that there's somebody else out there that is going through the same thing or has gone through the same thing and made it through. And that's huge. It's really huge to lean on one another. And I think in the world of this social media, we don't lean on each other as much as we think we do. We, put up what we want people to see, but then we hide behind the pretty picture, or we hide behind the family photo, but you haven't dealt with whatever it is that you just need to dig up and really focus in on. I think that's just the key to getting yourself retethered to God.
Was there another part of the book that you want to talk about?
There is. It's one that I don't think anybody ever brings up personally, and it's okay because everybody's got their own perspective. I really want people to kind of, find their own thing that works for them, because there's so many different Gabbies in here. That's what I say. So this one is called Soul Ties and Sailboats. It's actually my longest poem, so I will not go through the whole thing. That's why it's in the middle of the book. But this particular one is really about soul ties. A lot of people do not realize soul ties come in so many different facets. Soul Ties and Sailboats is my sinner's prayer. And I call it that because it was really the moment for me in the middle of my writing. It took me 2 years to write this book.
Wow.
I was very diligent in the way that I wanted things to be. It actually started out as I wanted to be a devotional. So we'll work on that. But
to come.
Has to come. But it was the moment that I realized, I changed who I was to fit these people, other people I dated, not even just the ex-husband, but other people I dated, other friends, other whatevers. I tethered myself to them. The original intention was for Gabby to be this pure shell, untouched, and you just roll through life. He has a plan that's so perfect. It's not always easy, but he has a perfect plan that's sometimes a little easier than the one we choose.
Yeah.
And not that it's always going to be easy, but sometimes it is. And I truly believe that if I would have chosen...
maybe you're going to find less strife.
Maybe, right? Perhaps. Maybe not at all, but who knows? Yeah. But even then, there is the perfect, there is the permissive will. I knew I was outside of that. So this here really explains that for me. And I'll just kind of read. Honestly, the beginning of the book of this is so profound to me. It's still one of my favorite things that I wrote. It says, Lord, you created this whole, a perfect new creation formed in your image, a symmetry made to drive forward without resistance, void of your whispers, a form reflective of your original will. Yet I moved the rudders on my own adding and taking away height to a mast already prepared for your destination. And out of rebellion to your faithful life-giving wind, I tethered my strings to souls not worth more or stronger than a shoestring. So I budgeted my worth and cut pieces of my ropes and anchored them to immortal souls who didn't fear a God bigger than the view and the secrets heaven knew about this mahogany hole. God already created me with blessed symmetry for the journey. I blocked my God-given blessings and I bound my ropes to the sails of another soul. It felt more like I was pounded by the soles of their feet, and thus tying myself to the feet of a wanderer in search of which direction he thought best, pulling my sails and manipulating this boat. I sold my soul to the ways he told me to go, a man never humbled by the divine's knowledge, wills, and goals. This never really builds kingdom, just a pauper's small and tiny home. Every time he pulls a string, my soul drifts from my destiny, wandering into an abyss. Do you believe God ever intended life to be like this? And so that was, that was one of those moments that I was like, wait a minute. I have sat here connecting myself to people who didn't even see what God had intended my life to be. Mm-hmm. And I think that we do that so much because we want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want to be loved, we want to be not alone. Yeah. We want to be all of these different things when God's like, I'm right here. I have this plan for you. And you're not listening. He told me, don't you marry that guy. He tells you, don't go here. He tells you not to do these things. Don't drink that thing. Don't touch that thing. Don't, do these things. He'll tell you to do things, the good stuff or whatever it may be. But a lot of times we take life in our own hands because we're control freaks. I know I am. Yeah. And we're guiding this boat that he's already made perfect. And then we're cutting stuff and making our own sails and we're out there like, we're going to do it. And he's like, you crazy girl. I know there's a storm coming. Yeah. I already know what's out there because he made us. He created us. Who am I to tell him, right? Right. Who am I? But you do, because we're human. But even then, that's why I wrote The Spiral of Desire. I want people to understand that if you're outside of God's will, you're not going to go the right direction. Mm-hmm. And it might seem like it's all fun and games, but he knows what's coming. Yeah. And until you tether your soul to the one that really created you, you take those masks down and those cells down and you put things up and you pull it up just like he wants it to be so you can go the direction he's already planned for you. Then you'll be in his will. Then things will finally start to go the right way, And that desire, you gotta check it. Check those desires. Check your heart. Mm-hmm. Check your mind. Check where you came from. Yeah. And check where you're going. And a lot of us don't do that. So.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. That is really beautiful. Actually, I remember that poem too. So I want to ask you this because just like, going back to your friend that committed suicide. Yeah. I've never had suicidal thoughts. Yeah. And so when other people tell me they have them, I'm surprised because I'm like, how, why? Right. And it's so mysterious to me. Yeah. How do we, I guess it's two questions. How do we, as people that don't have those thoughts, how do we try to understand people that when they do share with us, these thoughts, how should we respond, or what should we realize about what they're going through?
I think the best thing I can say is I don't think that a person can ever really empathize. They can empathize, but I don't think they can understand. I think that you have to just have an empathy. That's what I was trying to say. And the reason I say that is because, it's kind of like, how do you know how heavy a pail of water is until you've held it yourself? Yeah. You just can't know. But I do say this much. when your friends go silent, when your friends don't show up the way they did before, when your friends aren't calling you, you call them. Even if they don't respond, even if they don't come around, you always invite them. You always ask them if they're okay. You always send a message. You always text. It doesn't matter if you never hear from them again. And I say that because I just know how lonely it is to have people have a moment where they go, well, that's not the Gabby that gives me the laughter anymore, or the whatever it is they glean from you, because a lot of times some people are only your friends because you're that chipper person, but they're not your friend in the dark times.
Yeah.
They're not your friend when there's moments when you do need them, because you don't even have the strength to call that person or to hug them or to see how they're doing because you feel like your world is caving in. Pick up that phone. Even if they don't reply, they've read that message. They didn't know they have worth, at least in you.
Yeah. That's a good reminder.
Yeah.
That's a really beautiful reminder.
And I mean that so deeply. I know probably the only time I will cry this whole time. I've healed from so many things, but that's still a thing I'm healing from. And it's a thing I reach out to people. They'll be like, whoa, where did you come from? You fell in my heart. You fell in my spirit. I saw your picture. I don't know what you're going through. I'm praying for you. Blessings, love you, whatever.
Yeah.
You have no idea what that means for some people. There are very few friends I have that would just whisper out to me, just randomly. And those are the people I have the deepest connections with, because they understand that when I go silent, sometimes it's not personal. And a lot of times people take those things personally.
Yeah.
Just hug them. Just love them from afar. They can be 1,000 miles away. I love you.
Yeah, that's
That
so
means
beautiful.
everything.
So then, what do you tell the person that's having those thoughts today?
One, and you can't always push the go get help thing, because sometimes people feel like they're doing that. It's not to say that they shouldn't. No, get your help. But sometimes that's a thought that they aren't ready for yet.
Yeah.
So again, that encouragement. You can't really, you try, tell them, hey, maybe there's something you've been through that might be able to give them some sort of hope, But I think just being there, telling them that they have worth. Hey, can you find something in your life that gives you joy? That's a really good question. That's a real good question, I think, for people who are going through that. I remember my therapist and a friend of mine asking me, like, so you have children. Like, what's the one thing that you love to do most with them? Won't you miss that? And I was like, it checked me. Yeah, I'll miss that. Yeah, I'll miss them being with you. And not about how do you think that'll make somebody else feel, but put it in their court. Because most of the time people who have suicidal thoughts or ideations or whatever, they're already putting all their love into someone else. So you need to make sure that it is about them, because it's not, a lot of times they're not very selfish people at all. They're people who want to protect the world from their pain. They don't want them to feel that. So, just asking, are you doing okay? Are you gonna, what do you need from me? What can I do? Is there anything I can do?
It's interesting you say that, because I think what us people on the outside would probably think, well, think about what you're going to do to the people that you leave behind, and we try to almost guilt trip you into.
We don't care.
Yeah, that's interesting.
We don't care, and we don't care because we've already thought about those things. It's the reason we're in that situation, because we've already cared so much. We're so vulnerable in that way that we've done everything we can to try to make that person love us or like us or whatever it might be that we're not getting. And so when you do that, it just piles on the weight. And a lot of times people will push you away, and they don't mean to, but that's just all they know how to do, because it's too much. Yeah.
Wow, that's really powerful. So where are you going from here?
Oh my goodness. So this is such a, it's an evolving thing. I have up on my Instagram, it's like, don't blink or I'll evolve. And it's true because I really do, I change from day to day. Ask my children, ask my boyfriend, ask my parents. I will wake up and not be cooking cakes anymore. No, really, you know?
Right.
So it just depends on life. But with this will always be with me. Obviously, it's my story. But the intent to do something like this, I always want to be able to share my story at this capacity. And I always want to be able to give somebody, you know, this, because I want them to be like, girl, I understand.
I see myself in here.
I've been here, you know, I've been on the floor crying, and God, you can do this for me too. God, you can heal me too. Honestly, I want to do this. This is where I go from here, is hopefully doing more things like this.
Yeah.
I want to, hey, I'll come along with you. Whatever it is that's needed for women to free themselves. Women, I think we're just kind of cloaked and covered by so many things that the world puts on us. We need our voices.
That's right.
We need our voices. We need God, and we need our voices. So,
yeah, awesome. So to wrap up, I'm so thankful that you're here. You were like one of the first people that I thought about. I was like, oh my goodness, Gabby has to come and have a seat. And it finally happened. But would you like to pray for us today?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's just close our eyes, and I really hope that this has blessed you, and I'm grateful that you sat and listened. But we'll just pray. God, I'm so grateful for this opportunity to sit here and to sit with my sister and just talk about what God has done in our lives. And God, I pray that you who are watching out there, I pray that you have a breakthrough, that you reveal some things that are deeply seated in your life that you may not have even realized you needed to heal from. But I pray that God does some miraculous work in you, that you see some things that you need to dig up so you can move past that baggage, and you can see those red flags more clearly, that you can be more discerning about who's around you, that you can maybe one day be able to tell somebody else about your story, because most of the time that's what it's for. And I pray that you just tether your soul to who God has intended you to be, because his will is the only thing that matters more than anything. And God, I just ask that you reveal those things to the people watching, God, and give those people purpose and power and glory and all the things you have intended us to be. Your intended will is the way that it should be. Your will be done. And I pray these things in Jesus' precious name, God. Amen.
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 Thank you so much for joining us. Hey, like, subscribe, share it. It needs to be shared. I think a lot of people will find,
Pray.
yeah, I think they'll find themselves in the story and be blessed by it. So,
Thanks, Wendy.
all right. See you next time.